Hi everyone and welcome to Protocol 36, and in today's video we'll be speculating if we could see other heroes from the Marvel universe in Marvel Spider-Man 2. Now we'll be talking about heroes outside of the Spider-Man lore, so I won't be including characters like Miles Morales, who as we know is definitely going to appear in the game. At least, I hope so. But before we get started, if at any point you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate if you could drop a like, as that would really help out the channel. Thank you. Now when it comes to talking about other heroes in the Marvel universe who could show up in Marvel Spider-Man 2, we're going to have to talk about specific characters who are very close to Peter Parker and has teamed up with them in the past, and whether or not they are likely to appear in the game. So the first one I'll be talking about is none other than the Sorcerer Supreme himself, Doctor Strange. As most of you have already seen the Sanctum Sanctorum in both Batman PS4 and Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales, so it is implied that he does exist in this universe and is most likely already the Sorcerer Supreme. Now even though personally I would love to see Doctor Strange in Marvel Spider-Man 2, especially in a side mission or in a DLC mission, I personally think he's one of the more unlikely ones to appear in the game, because I don't think there might be a way in which it could fit into the story, and it looks like Insomniac are instead focusing on more grounded stories for Spider-Man, which I personally prefer. But Doctor Strange would definitely be a welcome addition to this game if given the right story and role. Now the next one we have the Fantastic Four. Not only are they extremely close to Peter and even think of him as family, they also helped him discover that the Venom symbiote was actually an alien being and not some form of alien technology. And assuming Spidey has already met them in this universe, given that Peter has been Spider-Man for about 9 years in Spider-Man Miles Morales, and that Marvel Spider-Man 2 may in fact tackle the symbiote storyline, it would make a lot of sense for them to appear in this game, helping Peter analyze and understand the true nature of the suit like in the comics, and possibly even its origins. Even though there are a few references to Marvel's first family in Spider-Man PS4, I also think there's a less chance of them appearing in this game, especially when we still don't really have the Baxter building in this universe, unless it's located elsewhere in New York, which could possibly mean that they might not be the big superhero team like they are in the comics. And even though we have the Avengers Tower, I also don't think any of the core members of the Avengers are going to appear in the game. Next we have Daredevil. Daredevil and Spider-Man, even though they did have their differences in the comics, are indeed very good friends. And we know that Daredevil already exists in Insomniac's Marvel universe, and in fact already met Spider-Man as Matt Murdock, giving him a card in case Peter needed a lawyer. And with Yuri possibly becoming Wraith, stealing technology from one of Daredevil's villains, I definitely do think there's a chance of him showing up in the game. Though at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't show up in the game. The next character we have is the Punisher. I mentioned the Punisher in one of my previous videos where I talked about if we're going to get any villains outside of Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery to show up in Marvel Spider-Man 2, and I know that Punisher isn't a villain but an anti-hero, and the reason why I mentioned him in this video is so he could appear as an antagonist to Peter, who may possibly bond with the Venom symbiote, becoming more aggressive, which would not only scare civilians but also cause reporters in the Bugle or other newspaper publishers to report that Spider-Man may have in fact gone bad, which would lead the Punisher to go after him. And like I've mentioned in that video, I would personally love to see that, especially when they first met each other in the comics. They actually had a fight in the Amazing Spider-Man issue 129, so it would be awesome to see them together in the video game, and later they come to realize that there's been a misunderstanding and they could possibly team up, going after a common enemy and having some level of respect for one another, even though they don't really agree with each other's methods. Personally, this would make a great side mission for Marvel Spider-Man 2, and I can actually see that being the case if Insomniac were to add any other heroes in the sequel, as it would still keep things grounded. Next we have Wolverine. Wolverine is also a character who are good friends with Spider-Man and want the best for each other, and as we know, he's not only one of the most popular X-Men characters but also one of the most popular and beloved characters in comics. Now we don't know what Wolverine is up to in this universe, and to be honest, we may never know, which is why even though I would love for him to show up in the sequel, I think it is unlikely for him to make an appearance, as we don't even know if the X-Men are a team in this universe or not. Now I know that in my previous video I mentioned that the Juggernaut is one of the most likely villains to show up in the sequel, but to be honest, the Juggernaut is a character who can exist without the X-Men, as not only is he the brother of Charles Xavier, but also in the comics he's not a mutant and instead got his powers from the Crimson General Sidorak, which is why I still think he has a chance of showing up in the game, though I'm definitely not ruling out the chance of Wolverine showing up in this game, as I would love for him to show up. And it's definitely possible that Insomniac weren't allowed to reference the X-Men in Spider-Man PS4 because Disney didn't really earn the rights to them until much later on. So even though I don't think Wolverine will show up in the sequel, never say never. However, in my opinion, when it comes to the question of whether or not we would get other heroes in Marvel Spider-Man 2, personally I think we most likely won't, as I think villains outside of Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery have more of a chance of showing up instead of the heroes, mostly because of the fact that Taskmaster showed up in the first game. And personally, I'm not really expecting any of them to show up because I think Insomniac are more interested in focusing on characters in the Spider-Man lore instead of putting any other Marvel heroes in it. But if Insomniac were to put any Marvel characters in the game, I definitely think Daredevil has a very good chance, and Punisher being an antagonist in a side mission. However, even though I don't think Insomniac will add any other Marvel heroes in the game, it definitely doesn't mean that they won't, and I could definitely be wrong, which is why I want to know what you guys think. Do you think Insomniac will add any other heroes in Marvel Spider-Man 2? Let me know in the comments down below. I would love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram and Twitter. If you enjoyed this video, please like, and want more, subscribe. To begin, Protocol 36.